My name is Jonathan Ricci, and you are listening to the F1 Podcast. What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here from the F1 Podcast. Happy Tuesday, November 7th, and we are recording this a few days after the Brazilian Grand Prix, and I'm here with Andrew Cleary. Andrew, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How are you?
It's kind of an exciting week because we get to celebrate you on Saturday. So I get to see you on Saturday. Going to be visiting London. Laurie is playing Western in football for the Yates Cup finals. So I'm going to be there beforehand with a couple of friends. And then we get to celebrate your engagement party that Saturday. So we're really excited about that.
No, it's gonna be a great night. A lot of fun, a lot of friends, a lot of food, a lot of drinks. It'll be a time to remember.
Just so excited to come back and obviously see you again. We had a lot of fun at Trinity Common a couple of weeks ago. Which race was that?
That was a US? No, that was not USGP.
Yeah,
it was USGP. Yeah.
So we normally are really good about recording episodes, but last week we did have some conflicting schedules. Some of us did get sick, so unfortunately we weren't able to provide a proper in-depth review of the 2023 Mexican Grand Prix. But Andrew wants to do a quick
I'll do like the 2-minute review of it.
So yeah, Andrew wants to do a quick 2-minute update on this. So I'll turn it over to him.
Basically, Mexico Grand Prix, most chaotic fans, one of the most chaotic fan bases, one of the worst tracks around. And you clearly showed that weekend because not much action happened other than a crash between I believe it was
Perez and Leclerc.
Yeah, or Magnussen too got in collision. There was collision damage from Stroll and Alonso, who had a terrible weekend at Aston Martin. But Danny Rick had an incredible weekend, starting in P4, which was ahead of Sergio Perez, which made another case as to why maybe he's not fit for the second seat at Red Bull. And then what really dogged the race was unfortunately Perez crashing out lap one, right? Having the collision damage on lap one kind of cemented, unfortunately, the end of his race. And it was tough to watch afterwards because Checo was in a good position potentially when especially on the first turn. He had a chance to overtake Leclerc and Verstappen to get into P1, but I got a little too greedy on the outside, clipped Leclerc from there. Leclerc didn't have any damage, but Perez did. He ended up going out. But as you can tell, Max Verstappen set the record for most wins in a season at the time with 16 in Mexico, which was beating his previous record of last year, 15, followed by Lewis Hamilton, P2, Charles Leclerc, P3, and Carlos Sainz, P4. So good weekend for Ferrari, and then, Lando Norris, P5 to round up the top 5. But as we're going to talk about this weekend, some of these people that are in the top 5 did not have, or even top 6 with George Russell, did not have a good weekend.
The only thing that was really exciting was that crash in turn 1. I was curious to see if Sergio Perez was going to blame Leclerc, but he kind of took it on himself.
The fans did enough of that. Just booed his ass the entire way on the podium, and he's like sticking up, having to defend himself on the podium, like, guys, I didn't have anywhere to go. They don't give a shit, Charles. They're gonna boo you. They're gonna boo you no matter what.
Interesting perspective on there. And so then we kind of start moving towards Brazil. Erica made this comment a couple of weeks ago. We haven't really had a silly season this year in terms of like driver gossip, but after the weekend's crash, I don't know about you, Mr. Aston Martin over there, but is Fernando Alonso actually going to go to Red Bull? He was out for blood this weekend, whoever spread that rumor.
You can't have silly season without Helmut Marko running his mouth at Red Bull. It wouldn't be the same. It just would not be the same. So, of course, Alonso has dismissed speculation looking to move from Aston Martin to Red Bull. But from what I understood, it would have been insane. The situation of events would have unfolded would have been that Lawrence Stroll, basically after Mexico, was pretty much just going to sell the team. He was going to sell the team away, meaning that Lance would not have a seat anymore in F1 as a paid driver, and likely no one would take him as well, right? All things considered at that time. Fernando Alonso would have moved to Aston Martin. Liam Lawson would have filled Yuki Tsunoda's seat in at AlphaTauri with Danny Rick. And then you would have had Tsunoda and Perez move to Aston Martin to fill the seats, which is just a wild chain of events when you think about it in context. But apparently those are rumors. But we've heard those rumors happen before and seen silly stuff like that happen. So I believe there could be some merit to it at the end of the day.
Do you remember when Sebastian Vettel, I don't know which podcast or whatever he said, he's like, the only time I'll get Instagram or social media is when I retire. And then the minute he downloads Instagram and then he announces retirement.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso dismissed speculation linking him with a move from Aston Martin to Red Bull and has promised consequences for those behind the rumors. Quote, these rumors are the normal paddock rumors from people that they're just trying to make fun of and gain some followers and this kind of thing. But I'm not into that game. And I don't know why all the attention just recently came to him. I know Alonso finished on the podium the first 6 of his 8 races, and the team's form fell dramatically. And I don't know if someone's just like, oh, maybe you should go somewhere else. But yeah, I just kind of was hoping for something fun leading up to Friday. But I guess let's kind of jump into qualifying, unless you have anything else to comment there.
Could have happened very well. So, but there was no real substance behind the rumors. It was kind of like a pipe dream thought. I think someone just kind of threw it in the F1 silly season algorithm and just figured out what it could spit out. And then boom, that was the rumor. And people made wind of it. So who knows at this point? Would I blame him for leaving if he did? No, because that Martin, after the first like 5-6 races, have been an absolute shit show. And he's put that car in absolute positions where it should nowhere be. Now we're going into Friday. Yeah, quite a turnaround weekend, if I do say so myself.
And can we just take in like how impressive that they were able to get pretty much all of qualifying done before the storm just kind of dropped?
You see that storm?
It
ripped off scaffolding off the tents.
Yeah, it was. I think it was on Instagram or TikTok or something, and just literally boom, gone.
You can see how dark it was. Kind of cool. In the last lap in Q3 when Verstappen was finishing his lap, you could just see the clouds roll in, and it literally looked like it was nighttime there. And that's the fun part about Brazil, right? This race has got everything. For the past few years, it's just had like everything in terms of like crazy weather, followed by really competitive racing. But Friday was a really great opportunity for I would say teams to, I guess, take advantage of the sprint weekend potentially with regards to how they qualified. I know that the rain did cause a red flag in Q3 for the remaining 4 minutes, and you're kind of like thinking, why would it cancel? Like, why would you for 4 minutes? And then you saw the rain roll through. You're like, oh yeah, there's no way they're going on track to even set a time remotely close to what their soft time was going to be on Q3.
Even if they put on like a wet or an intermediate tire, like it would have made no freaking sense. So it's just like you just like kind of disband there. But let's just talk about some. There might have been some bad races for Aston Martin, but Lance Stroll found himself in 3rd ahead of his teammate Fernando Alonso, and I think that was Stroll's highest starting position since 2020's Turkish Grand Prix, where he took pole position. I couldn't
believe it. Like, I couldn't believe how, after having such a terrible weekend in Mexico, that this team was all of a sudden been able to turn it around and have Stroll find P3 and Alonso P5 out of their back pocket like that. It was a breath of fresh air. Let's say, as an Aston Martin fan, that's for sure.
Yeah, on that perspective, like even Oscar Piastri was not able to set a time because his car slipped off into the grass because as the weather just became unbearable. Penalties were awarded for, it just started the weekend for Mercedes. Russell got a penalty for blocking the pit exit in Q1, each driver, and then Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly as well. I still can't get over that grandstand collapsing, but let's kind of go into like the sprint, because I don't know about you, Andrew. I'm happy the sprint races are over. I'm tired with them.
It's such a Toto made a good point about this when he got interviewed, is that there's just no continuity between the weekends. But like what's the freaking purpose of a sprint format? All it is for 8 points, and they're doing a lot of work, like up to 8 points for the first place driver, right? That's just so much work with like a sprint qualifying format and then a sprint race. I think the race is a good idea if you kind of do a let's say like a reverse grid opportunity. I think that would be quite interesting, because I find a lot of it's fun when even Lewis said his favorite sprint moments have been in Brazil when he had to start at the back there in 2021 and he made up like 15 places in the sprint race, right? It's just a whole different strategy when you do a reverse grid. But the way that they have it situated out right now, there's no continuity between the weekends. It's just another showcase, another way for Liberty Media to make their money. And I think when you had like 3 sprint races and 4 like Grand Prix weekends, it's just so much getting shoved down your throat that it's quite sickening.
Oh, don't worry. We'll talk about Liberty Media when we talk about Vegas preview. But before we kind of get, that's not until later in the episode. I think for also one of the things that I just don't really like, I think just because the tire allocation plays even a bigger factor into that weekend. So if you can only use X amount of tires and then now you have to throw a sprint into it, it kind of just throws off your Sunday strategy. And is it even worth like that 8 points? And I mean, Max Verstappen has won, I think, 7 sprint races in his career already. I know Lando topped this timing sheets, giving him pole position, but it was like, okay, like how long was he going to hold that until Max was going to capture him?
Yeah. To be fair, Checo had a good sprint race, starting in qualifying P3 and then finishing P3, which is his first podium finish in a race since Monza. That's a long time ago.
And I think there's been a lot, and we've been talking about this, how much pressure that's been going on him, especially with the recent dominance of Lewis Hamilton and him coming back and making that gap closer for P2 in the Drivers' Championship. This was definitely a weekend where he really needed some motivation. He needed to prove himself, just, maybe to shut up Helmut Marko or some of the haters out there. And I think, yeah, especially the response in the sprint race, and we can kind of talk about Sunday's race, but it definitely brought into, like, I think Dave definitely gave him a little bit more of a boost going into it. But sorry, I'll let you speak. My bad.
No, I was going to say too that with regards to the sprint race, we had some great quality racing though, especially that towards the end when Danny Rick was fighting Carlos for that last point, and Sainz did beat him by like 2/10 there into the line, kind of like a preview for what was to come on Sunday. But shout out to Yuki Tsunoda. He got P6 for 3 points then for AlphaTauri. Now having every team has now won points in the sprint format. So maybe it is doing its job in that regards. But I think just the way that they have it formatted currently is not correct.
AlphaTauri finally getting points. I mean, they finally got points in Mexico that really got them to jump Leclerc.
You lose. It starts P2 and then it was not his fault. So there was a massive issue with the engine. It basically was at a point where there was an abnormal value in one of the electric sensors, and to the point where like the safety feature shut off the entire engine while he was like in turn 5. If the safety feature was not there, the engine would have exploded. So
I just like, how much does this guy ever have any luck? Oh. I feel like we're wasting, I feel so bad because I'm also a Ferrari fan and this is frustrating to watch. And I missed the race by 5 minutes. And then when I saw your message, but it was just like, oh my gosh, like, of course, Leclerc.
Well, and the frustrating
the same spot, sorry to interrupt, the same spot as last year where he crashed.
Yeah, and the frustrating part too is that like you had a guy in P2, like Ferrari trying to contend with Mercedes, right, for P2 in the Constructors Championship this year, right? You have a guy starting in P2 in Charles with Hamilton and Russell starting back P6 behind the Aston Martin. So good opportunity for Ferrari to make up some ground this weekend with points to like kind of close in the gap for the final 2 races as we go to Vegas and Abu Dhabi. But just to see, he couldn't even start the race. Like we're going through the formation lap, and then all of a sudden you see Charles kind of spin into the wall because he had no engine, right? And it was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? I tell you what, Ferrari fans, you need to submit your therapy bills to Maranello, to the head office, and get them expensed, because this summer is going to be, or this winter break is going to be a very deep dive process. And how you're feeling as a Ferrari fan, because I haven't seen a team with this bad luck in a long time.
It's the second time he hasn't scored in the last 3 races, and then add to his disqualification from Austin. It's like at least he got small consolation that he did score a few points in the sprint, but like now Lando Norris is like caught up to him in the Drivers' Championship. So it's just adding more salt to the wound, or
So, but then, with that happened, they did the formation lap was fine. They were kind of then, but first lap we had a massive crash, right? Magnussen ran into the back of Albon, and then both drivers were out, so that got red flagged. Piastri and Ricciardo got damage on their cars due to hitting debris, but they had time to fix the cars in the pit lane before the restart, even though they were one lap down, which was kind of odd, right? They started due to the crash, right? They had to start one lap down from everybody else because of the of having to fix with the debris. So it was weird seeing like on the screen when you had everybody was like within 10 seconds each other to start, and you had to see 10 seconds, it's plus one lap. You're like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's definitely really interesting to kind of see what was the turnaround. And I think one of the things that I really noticed since the red flag and kind of continue on the rest of the race was, we talked about Mercedes and how they've really been making this push for P2 in the constructors and even P2 in the drivers really interesting, and the complete total opposite for a weekend for Mercedes. Like what happened? Because you saw Perez overtook Hamilton. They were struggling on tires, and then just kind of back and forth. And Toto Wolff looked literally like defeated. It's like we got a question from Landon Tulk in the group, good friend of ours, actually a Western grad. He said, like, what is like Mercedes need to do in Las Vegas? I mean, I would say not get distracted by all the glamour around Las Vegas and all the partying that's going to be happening, but I also just understanding how the track's going to be. But like, how could have a weekend been so bad for them? Just like so much, like especially like a track they won there before. Andrew, like Russell had his maiden win there. Hamilton's won that Hamilton's won from that track multiple times before. Just like a complete 180. And I think especially with Russell having to DNF his car due to some issues with it. It was a missed opportunity, and now has closed the gap between Ferrari and Mercedes to like now 20 points. So still could be keeping it competitive where Ferrari probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, last year, right? They finished what, P1 and P2 in the race, right? A double podium, and then George also won the sprint race the day before. I really think it has to do with getting the setup right in FP1. You only have one free practice session to really get the setup right. Otherwise, you're in Parc Ferme. You can't change the car. So,
Yeah.
I just don't think they got the setup right this week. And you could tell how visibly frustrated Hamilton was over the radio. You can see the absolute dejection in Toto's face. George having to retire after 57 laps due to an oil temperature issue. Like, it was just a horrible weekend for Mercedes. But what they do very well is they bounce back. Yeah. And expect them to bounce back, like with the traditional qualifying format. None more of this sprint format bullshit that we're so tired of watching. We're gonna have they'll have 3 free practice sessions at a new track in Vegas to get it sorted out. Which, side note, I saw the funniest meme today about the Vegas race. The flying pig from The Simpsons, or the pig from The Simpsons? Basically, someone flipped the pig upside down and said that's what the new track in Las Vegas looks like.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and I looked at it, I'm like, I can't stop looking at it because it looks exactly like that pig. But nevertheless, I think it was just a poor weekend in terms of getting set up, and they got overtaken quite a bit. I think Aston Martin got the setup correct, but for Mercedes, I think a silver lining though for them is that they know they have a very fast engine, right? Look, like they got beat by two of their competitors with the same engine, and McLaren, Lando finishing P2, and then Aston Martin, Alonso finishing P3 and Stroll finishing P5. I think that they know that they have a fast engine, which is good, but they need to get the setup right in order to maximize everything out of the engine plus aerodynamics, right? So it's just, I don't think the setup was correct that weekend, and that's kind of have to move on from there if you're a Mercedes fan.
And I think if you're a Mercedes fan, you're even more frustrating because you both saw like even Ferrari, not so much Carlos Sainz, but like both the Alfa Romeos had to like DNF, and that's a Ferrari engine. So like if there are struggles again, even when we talked about, I think it was last year where a number of the cars that had Ferrari engines that like just kaboot throughout the races, it's just like it's gonna make it a little tight towards the end of the season for P2.
Plus, you're Mercedes, you're kind of pissed because with Leclerc going out, you had a prime opportunity to like just try and put P2 to bed.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of let the door open still for Ferrari. I know it has to, there's got a lot that's got to go right for Ferrari to make up about 20 points in the next two races, but it's a very manageable opportunity.
I think one more DNF from either whether if it's Mercedes or Ferrari, and that just really just shows that they're well, that will determine who gets P2, I think, with 2 races left in the season.
Yeah, no, I agree.
One more DNF or it's gone. Like that's just the thing. But I think so. Let's kind of talk about this. Also, we did talk about Sergio Perez earlier, but talk about that battle to the final lap. And this is kind of what we wanted for a while. Just nail biter to the end for P3 in the P3 in the race for podium.
That's probably some of the best racing that we've seen in a very long time. Like that kind of goes up there with Fernando and Hamilton battling in Hungary in 2021. When Fernando made that Alpine about as wide as the track at the Hungaroring and Hamilton couldn't go around him. But it's, Alonso is just he's so racecrafty, right? And what I really appreciate is what Perez said after the race. He says, like, that's how the racing should be. He said 95% of the other guys, we would be crashing at one point. But, two skilled veterans in their craft just duking it out. And it was like a heavyweight tilt, right, man? Like for he even said himself, Alonso would put himself in other different racing lines to try and confuse Checo and, make Checo think about how to potentially overtake him. And, for the majority, I see half the race, Perez was stuck behind Alonso, even with DRS. And then I think it was at lap 70, Perez was over to take him, with then Alonso overtaking him in the next lap, and then just an absolute battle to the line that saw Fernando nip it by 0.053 seconds. Just unbelievable racecraft. And honestly, probably one of the best things to watch of the day, because it became a 2-horse race at the start with Max and Lando. Credit to Lando. He was doing Max's lap time so consistently at the beginning there and for the majority of the race, for the first part of that race, but just kind of tapered off because Max is Max, right? And he's just so consistent, right? An absolute machine. But it was just incredible battling to watch for P3 and P4. And even in the midfield too, there were some great battles throughout the day. So it was fun to watch. And honestly, if it could race that Interlagos every weekend, I would have no problem with it.
Yeah, and I think just the fans out there, and just the history of that track, and just I think clearly seeing those kind of last couple of laps kind of play out was really good. And as always, Max Verstappen won the race 8 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. He breaks another record. Claimed the highest percentage of race wins per season. Record was from per season. Record was from 1952 season. He achieved his 19th podium of the season, breaking his own record from 2021. And I don't know if you know this, he overtook Alain Prost's total race wins by reaching his 52nd win, with one away from tying 4-time champ, my idol, Sebastian Vettel. So it's
he very well could break his record too over the next 2 weeks.
Even though that he thinks Vegas is a little all speculative. I don't know what I'm saying here. Is all lights.
It's basically going to be a show then rather than a race. It's going to be Monaco in the U.S. under the lights. How about that?
I was going to say Monaco in the desert, but yeah, let's go with Monaco under the lights. So I think is there anything else particularly that we kind of want to talk about Brazil, so we can just kind of jump into the weeks leading up to
double points for Yuki in terms of the sprint and the race. So good race weekend overall for him, I thought. And then Alpine got double points too, P7 and P10. So I think it's a good weekend for those kind of midfield teams. I think that solidified themselves into P6, obviously, but Alonso has got to worry about Norris creeping up behind him in the World Drivers' Championship, because he is now 3 points ahead only of Lando Norris in that regards.
Yeah, I think that's definitely interesting. I don't know if Hamilton will catch Perez anymore. I think that is we've that with Perez's win or the fourth place position now. But yeah, now you have Hamilton at 226, Alonso at 198, Norris at 195, Sainz at 192, and Ferrari at Leclerc at 170. Yeah, it's curious to see how the last couple of weeks will go. I mean, I said that Ferrari was going to win constructors this year.
You lose.
I was wrong. So the reason why I kind of wanted to talk about Las Vegas, particularly our friends at the Dirty Side of the Track podcast, Brian and Rob, spoke about some news leading up to Las Vegas, particularly how hotel prices are dropping substantially. I don't know if you've really kind of been following this, but I posted an article I'll maybe post it in the chat, but basically when prices surged, there was panic booking from fans, in that hotels were like fully booked in instance. But now, ever since the first announcement, prices have been declining recently. Whereas, like, for example, a night at Circus, when the first initial rates were going, was going for $649 a night. And I don't know about you, Andrew, Circus is not worth $649 a night.
No.
Now they're charging $111 per night. The average decrease of all across all 22 hotels was analyzed 59% drop. And Aria Hotel, still one of the most expensive ones on Vegas, have their rates held and are still charging the same what they did 1 year ago. I mean, I was still finding rooms for like $250 to $300 a night, which is kind of typical of Vegas on a weekend. I mean, but I think the catch is still tickets are still available, but they're still pretty expensive. I did find tickets for like $1,200 for the weekend. Normally, I think if you go to like Montreal, you're paying like $500 maybe for the whole weekend. But I can just tell you, the public opposition within Vegas and a lot of Vegas YouTubers are furious with this weekend.
Like, and Clark County held like a council meeting, and they were just livid about the construction and all the scaffolding that's taking away the aesthetic appeal of the strip. But I'm like, as a public official, you have to understand this is what's going to happen when you bring a race to the city, you know, and it's going to be a short-term pain for like a long-term gain, because the tourism dollars, as you can clearly see, is going to be substantial, you know, for your local, you know, for this particular weekend. But I agree. Max Verstappen made a comment earlier this week about how they're more worried about the show than the actual race. And that's very true. Like, why are they racing in Vegas? Only to race, like, pretty much to drive down the strip at night when it's all lit up. Like, that's what we're only here for.
Well, did you even see like the opening ceremonies? will.i.am, Keith Urban, Steve Aoki, Tiesto.
You know, like Blue Man Group, Cirque du Soleil will be there.
Yeah. Oh, I should have mentioned, the tickets are still relatively expensive. $2,500 for a 3-day grandstand. I think I saw for one ticket, I think that was the $1,200. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see. And like, if any of our fans that are going to the Las Vegas Grand Prix, please tell us how it is. I think one of our friends that we met at the Trinity Common said she is going. So love to hear what people's perspectives are going into it.
Now, I want to take a moment. I laughed I saw a video this week. I think it was a TikToker in Las Vegas. Liberty Media are going above and beyond to penalize people who don't pay for a ticket to not be able to view the race at all, pretty much.
Yeah.
So basically, any bridgeway that's over the track there on the strip and that's got glass that you can see across the street has this film on it, so you can't see through spacing, so you can't see the track fully while walking through. And I was just like, are you serious? You got to go through all this length to it was Jacob Worth. Yeah, this is all this length just to not see like a race and like make seconds of a race at that point. I just think it's there's a way to do it. You close off you close off those overpasses during the race. You don't have to worry about it. But like it's just a pettiness level that they're going to when they're just charging absorbent amount of money they're going to make anyways through celebrity appearances, and people are still going to buy tickets for that race. I just think it's it's a level of pettiness that only Liberty Media can aspire to.
Yeah, and I can definitely know. I just it's just so crazy just to think of just some of these rates for these hotels. Mind you, I've looked at I've looked at Montreal, and they're still pretty relatively expensive for rooms for the Canadian Grand Prix for next year. But just seeing the price drop, the Bellagio dropped 5%, Caesar's Palace dropped 56%. Circus 83%. The Excalibur dropped 69%. Flamingo 78%. The Rio 79%. It's just wild. Like a night, Planet Hollywood. It was $1,200 per night on November 7th, 2022. On November 6th, 2023, they're now only charging $341 a night for the weekend.
And they're going to have to get this. I think there was also talks too that the racetrack might not be potentially ready in time, where it's going to be it's going to come down right to the wire, right? And they got 9 days to get it done.
Yeah.
Because that's when first practice is going to be. Also crazy time. It's going to be 11:30 Eastern Standard Time is when pre-practice. Qualifying is going to be 3 a.m. on November 18th because they have to do it after a certain time.
So I just realized,
midnight
Andrew,
there.
Even if we try to do a bar night, I don't think we'll be able to go because liquor laws stop serving at 2.
Yeah, like you could get hammered and then go home while you're eating your drunk food, watch qualifying for an hour. There you
go. I just actually found a room at the Rio Hotel for Thursday night. $24, 71 including with resort fees for just one night. King bed.
Not bad.
Can't say that as it for every weekend, but yeah. So I think we'll give a little. I think maybe we'll do an episode next week just talking about some of the things leading into.
I think there's going to be some more drama coming into next week for the Grand Prix, and then also maybe some potential silly season information. Who knows? Yeah.
I'm curious to see how just some of the things play out, but I think we covered a lot this week's episode. So season 3, episode 29. We're coming towards the end. We only got a couple races left, and we have to do our formies. Stay tuned. Like, the season's not over yet for us completely, but I mean, I'll get to see you on Saturday. We're going to be at the Laurier football game at Western on Saturday, seeing some fans there. I mean, there's still opportunities to see us. But yeah, I think just continue to follow us on social media channels. And I think we're 667 followers on Instagram. So that'd be nice to hit 700 before the end of the month. So keep up that support. But yeah, I think that will wrap up this week's episode of the F1 podcast. I'm Ricci, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Andrew Cleary. Andrew, gonna see you in a couple of days. I said that like 4 times this episode, kind of fired up to see it. So I will let you do the honors to send us off.
Everyone, thank you very much for listening to season 3, episode 29. 29 episodes, Ricci. We're almost at the 30 mark for this season. Yes, please follow us on now TikTok, Instagram, and then all for our F1 content, as well as follow us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube to get all your podcast content. We will see you probably next week for a little preview of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We're probably going to see more drama prior to the start of the race, but going to be quite the spectacle for these final 2 races. And maybe we can see if Max Verstappen can tie Sebastian Vettel's record under the lights in the desert. Thanks for listening, and talk to you soon.